So in this tutorial I'm going to talk about the very bare bones basics of air mechanics and the way they work in Wargame and Red Dragon. To start, every airplane is very different from the last. You actually have to look at each of the individual stats just like tanks and the whatnot. Every single aircraft has its own unique abilities and the whatnot. You got your own interceptors, you got your bombers, cluster bombers, carpet bombers, you name it, it's in the game. To start, aircraft move pretty realistically as to the way they would in real life. They aren't just, they don't just run over the battlefield and kill whatever you want and whenever you want. You have to be very careful with them because they can go down pretty quickly. I mean, after all, most of them are built out of light materials anyway, so they get shot down pretty quickly. So you have to be very careful with how you use them. One of the best things you can learn on how to use them is knowing how the air corridor system works in this game. What I mean by the air corridor is where your aircraft come from, and that's right here. The game defaults all aircraft in this entire game. If you automatically just click in any direction with one aircraft and then ask it to evac, it will always evac left, whether it comes out of the left or the right side of the air corridor. Always evacs left, every time. Now, you might be wondering, is there any way that I can get it to evac right instead? Well, there is. All you have to do is click on the aircraft, move it the direction that you want to, and then move it right. Whatever the aircraft's last known order given to it in that direction, so if the last known order to this aircraft was to move right, at any point in time, it will evac right. If the last known order, if you gave it to move straight, then right again, and then you move it left, it'll evac left. So whatever the last known direction, the order of the last direction, that is where it's actually going to evac out of. Otherwise, it's automatically defaulted to go left. Perfect example of why you wouldn't want it to do that is why you want to control where it evacs is. Let's say this attack marker is enemy AA. Enemy has the AA here, and you need to bomb this area, right? But you want to evac over here. Well, if I just order my Nighthawk here to go bomb, what's going to happen is it's going to fly right over the enemy anti-air. Notice how he's moving left, the best possible direction of enemy AA. Now, it might not always be right here, it could be over here. Either way, it's moving towards enemy AA and not away. Once again, the way you would alleviate that is pull up another bomb right here. Instead, rather than just directly ordering it to go straight to bomb, you move it left of the air corridor, and then you order the attack on position button for the bombing run to commence by making it move right to do that. So his last known order was to move right to bomb. And what will he do? He's going to evac right. So one of the most important things you can remember in this game is because you don't want your aircraft going in the evac route in the direction of enemy anti-air. Now, it's sometimes hard to predict enemy interceptors that might attempt to take out your bomber, but the most important thing is try to remember that enemy AA is the #1 thing you're trying to avoid because interceptors take a bit of time before they can get out. Aircraft in this game, as I said before, have a lot of different uses, and you always have to remember the speed between each of them. Some aircraft are slower than others. Take the A-10 Thunderbolt, for example. Look how slow this is in comparison to the F-15. Much faster. So once again, reading the stats of each aircraft and what their role is in the battlefield can really help with the understanding how to partake in the fight. Another thing I mentioned earlier before is just going straight out of the air corridor and bombing. It isn't always the best way to do that by just simply clicking and telling it to go somewhere. By doing that, if there's enemy AA right here, it has to fly right over the AA to hit this target. Perhaps you don't have any artillery and all you have is a bomber. Maybe you know where the enemy CV is back here. Well, look at all this wide open space you've got. Left and right sides. Well, if you take your bomber and move it out like this, away from the enemy AA position that we saw right here, rather than just going straight to the middle, let's say there's an AA here and here as well. Notice I'm avoiding all the enemy anti-air by going around, using all this extra space you've got over here. The game allows for these cool opportunities for you to go around and do these cool flank maneuvers way off to the sides of some of the maps. Now, there are some maps where there are exceptions to this, where it's kind of hard to go around, so you kind of have to make do, which is where you usually should start taking out enemy anti-air, usually with artillery. For the most part, air mechanics are pretty simple to learn, and the individual aircraft you'll have to get used to as time goes on. But the most important thing to remember is what I taught you about the air corridor thing. This is actually one of the best ways to save your bombers from enemy anti-air and buying them time. It could be the difference between a second or two before the last enemy round comes out, or even preventing the last enemy round to be fired on you. So if you were to go left, the enemy anti-air might get not just one round off, but two. Whereas if it goes right, it might only get one rocket off and hit your airplane and might not even shoot it down. So it's important to remember those few things about how aircraft mechanics work in this game. I'll get into depth with how bombing works more specifically and the tactics involved with it, but for the most part, just remember, don't send your bombers straight in to bomb a position. Always try to find an alternative route that might get you around enemy anti-air. And always remember, the aircraft always default to moving left out of the air corridor if you just left click. Notice how he did his bombing run, what I told you not to do when you send straight out, and he goes left. He could have just gone right over enemy anti-air. So, by moving him left, and then moving him right to do the bombing run, at the very least, he'll be evacing out right instead of left, away from enemy anti-air.